Well, good morning. It's March 17th at about 9:30 now, so we're going to end up getting started. Today, what we're going to end up discussing is we're going to talk about PLC and some of the decisions that'll have to be made in conjunction with that. But first, one thing I want to do, I've been getting a lot of questions recently about some of the changes to the county yield, and just to give people a perspective on what I'm talking about. I'm going to show a spreadsheet that was available on Farm Doc Daily. They do an excellent job of showing all the county NAS yield information and what your estimated ARC County payments are estimated to end up being for 2014. Now, when we're looking at Tennessee, these are the counties highlighted in yellow. You can see we're still missing some data for some of the counties. But we have got some yield estimates for a good majority of the counties in Tennessee. One thing that you will notice is we do have some very high yields that are being reported by NAS at this time. Now, what that's going to end up doing is that's going to substantially reduce, and quite often in a lot of circumstances, bring those estimated ARC County payments to zero when you have this high of a county yield, because it's going to counter off that decrease in price that we've seen from where the Olympic average is. So you have to remember, when we're looking at these ARC County estimated payments, there's two components that go into it: the price component and also the county yield component. And when we have these big yields for 2014 that we're using for our actual number and comparing it against past yields via the 5-year Olympic average, what we're going to end up seeing is a lot of that net revenue number, when you're taking the high yield plus a lower price, is going to not end up triggering a county payment in many circumstances. Some of the counties that do have lower yields or lower estimated NAS yields in 2014 still do have some reasonably high payments under these different price assumptions. But it is something where this is a new set of data that has come out from NAS, or reasonably new set of data that's come out from NAS. So if you did do a bunch of estimations using the FSA decision aids over the past few months, you might want to go back and revisit those and see how those have changed, or do some point estimates just using the formulas that we have available on the Farm Bill webpage, because we will see some dramatic changes potentially from where we had initial estimates for the 2014 year for ARC County. Because remember, these yields are going to impact ARC County. We're going to go through the PLC program today, and those use your CC yields, or your what a lot of people call their program yields, or payment yields. But we'll step through that day. This is important for ARC County, though, where these 2014 numbers are coming in on a county by county basis, and how that compares to your 5-year Olympic average for the past years, because that's going to really dampen down or eliminate some of the payments that we were maybe initially estimating closer to the beginning of the year. The other piece of data I did want to end up just quickly discussing was, again, we had a WASD report that came out on March 10th, just to give you an estimate of where the 2014-15 marking average prices are estimated at. For wheat, estimated at $6, for corn right at $3.70, and for soybeans at $10.20 as far as the midpoints go. The wheat range is $5.90 to $6.10, corn is $3.50 to $3.90, soybeans $9.45 to $10.95. Now, when we compare those to the PLC reference prices of $5.50, $3.70, and $8.40, it is almost a certainty that we will not see payments for soybeans or wheat for the 2014 marketing year. Corn is right on that threshold of $3.70, so we'll have to see where that one ends up playing out. If we look at where we are on the futures market, and again, you have to remember there's a big difference between the marking year average price and the futures market, but just to give you an indication of where we're at on the futures market, we've got May contract at about 377, For corn, the May contract at 9.66 for soybeans, and wheat, the May contract's at 5.12. This has been a reasonably consistent trading range for corn in particular. We've kind of seen corn prices since the beginning of the year on the May contract fluctuating between $3.70 and $4. Soybeans 9.60 to 10.70, so a wider range there, and then wheat at $4.80 to $6 as well. So we have seen some trading ranges so far in 2015 where it's been a little tighter for corn and a little bit wider for the other two principal commodities. The last thing that I want to mention before I get into the PLC component is that we are now past the crop insurance closing date, so hopefully everybody had a chance to evaluate their existing crop insurance and potentially look at that SCO or supplemental coverage option that can work in conjunction with PLC. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move into talking about the PLC decision-making process. Again, one thing I do want to restate is you can get a hold of me via email or phone to end up asking any specific questions, or if you'd like any information that we do have here, please contact me and I'll be sure to get it out to you. I do encourage people to visit our crop economics webpage where you can get some local or some Outlook information, and then also visit the Farm Bill webpage where we have some resources and links there that you'll find very useful. Just reminding people of the deadlines, we did end up seeing that March or the deadline to update base acres or update payment yields and reallocate base acres move to March 31st. So we do have an opportunity to still do that if we haven't done that. The one that I think is probably the most important of the two is to update those payment yields, because obviously you can pick on a commodity by commodity and farm by farm basis the higher of two numbers. So there's really no downside to that decision. So you want to make sure you evaluate that. And then again, we've got the March 31st deadline coming up, where you'll have to pick between the two versions of ARC or PLC. Now for the ARC individual, again, you're enrolling the entire farm and all covered commodities on that farm into that program, where PLC in ARC County is on a covered commodity by covered commodity basis and farm by farm basis. The last deadline, since I've removed the crop insurance one, since we've passed through that point, is we do have to remember this is a 5-year decision, but you do have to end up signing up for it each year. So for 2014-15 crop years, that's going to end up being mid or April into the summer. So we want to make sure that we are revisiting FSA to make sure that we're signing up for the 2014-15 crop years and not forgetting to do that. So again, this is one where the PLC program decision, one of the first steps and one of the more important ones, is going to be to update those yields. This is something that you should do regardless of whether you're going in PLC or not, but it's one that has the ability to end up benefiting your PLC payments if you choose to end up updating your yields. Essentially, it's a one-time decision by the landowner to update their existing CC yields. And essentially what you're allowed to do is, on a commodity by commodity and farm by farm basis, you're allowed to pick between your existing CC yield, which is that number that is on your Form 156EZ from FSA. It's the CC yield for each commodity, and compare it to a new yield. And to get that new yield, all you do is you take 90% of the average yield for crop years 2008 to 2012, exclude years in which planted acreage is 0, plus you have a plug yield that if you have an individual year that is less than 75% of the county average yield, you can plug in that county average yield. So again, you're comparing it to that existing CC number on your 156EZ, or you can end up looking at the number based on this formula here. Just to give you an indication of how it would end up working, you take your existing CC yield. In this example, we've got 105 for corn. Take your actual yields per planted acre, get these from your crop insurance agent. And in this set of circumstances, we have 110, 160, 170, and 160. In 2012, we had an off year, we only got 50. I'm using Robertson County, 75% of the Robertson County yield. You plug in 91 for the 50, What you do is you take an average of 110, 160, 170, 160, and 91. Multiply that 90 by 90%, and you get 124 bushels per acre. Since your 124 bushels per acre is higher than what your existing payment yield is, you would want to update. On the other side of the coin, if you're looking in this example, we have an existing CC yield of 40 for soybeans. We had actual yields of 35, 50, 45, 40, and 30. Our county plug yield does not come into play, so you just take an average of these 5 numbers, multiply it by 90%, you get 36. Since the 36 is lower than the 40, you would choose to maintain your soybean yield. Wheat, in this example, what I've done is I've had multiple years that were below that plug yield, so you can end up substituting the 48 in for the 35, the 35, and the 38. So then you take an average of 55, 48, 60, 48, 48, multiply it by 90%, and you would get 47. Again, since the 47 is higher than 43, you would choose to update your payment yield on this FSA farm. Again, this is one of the ones where it is a very straightforward decision. You're comparing on a crop by crop and farm by farm basis your existing CC yield, so the numbers in this category, versus the updated payment yield in the numbers in this category. And of course, both the University of Illinois tool and the Texas A&M tool on the FSA webpage will end up doing this automatically for you as long as you put in your actual yields. They'll come up with your plug yields. All you'll have to enter is what your existing CC yield is and what your actual yields per planted acre were. The next one, again, this one gets a little bit more tricky than the yield update, is to retain or reallocate your base acres. Again, this is a landowner decision. Hopefully most people, if they're looking at making decisions on behalf of their landowner, have updated their limited power of attorney forms, because that will allow them to be able to make some of these decisions on behalf of the landowner. Again, we're not increasing base acreage, we're just reallocating it amongst the existing crop. For cotton, which there is a lot of cotton base out there, you can't do anything with it. It just automatically becomes generic base, and you are eligible for payments on that generic base, but it doesn't factor into your reallocation decision. You should be making this reallocation decision in conjunction with your PLC and ARC decision, because it will vary given the fact that these programs pay on base acres, not planted acres, what your potential payments will end up being. A couple of reasons why you might want to reallocate your base acres for your covered commodities. If you can increase the likelihood of receiving payments on those base acres or increase the size of those payments, you may want to consider reallocating your base acres. Or more from a risk management standpoint, to more closely align your base acreage with what you're planting will allow you to end up using these commodity programs as a more effective risk management tool if you are able to realign your basis with what you're planting and what your planting intentions are moving forward. We look at where base acres are in Tennessee. This is from 2013. You can see we do have a substantial amount of planted acreage that has no base, roughly 20% of acreage in Tennessee. Planted acreage in Tennessee does not have a base. You can see where we are relative to the 4 main commodities or row crops in Tennessee. Cotton, obviously, the 736,000 acres will automatically become generic base. And we can end up getting payments under that if we end up planting this generic base to a covered commodity, and that is one of them that is an annual decision. But again, you can see where our base acres are. Given what we've been planting in Tennessee, we've obviously had a lot more soybeans the past few years. It's likely that soybeans is going to be one of those bases that we could potentially increase. Whether that's in our best long-term interest is an individual farm-by-farm choice based on what you're looking to get out of these commodity programs. So again, I'm not going to step through this in too much detail, but basically you have the choice to keep your existing base acreage. In this example, I've got 2013 base acres of 50 acres of wheat, 50 of soybean, 50 of corn, and 50 of oats for a total of 200. We can reallocate in proportion to the ratio of the 4-year average of planted acres from 2009 to 2012, plus prevented planting acres for all covered commodities. So in this example, for instance, we only planted 50 acres of wheat. Over that time period, we planted a total of 1,250. If you take 50 divided by 1,250, ends up giving you 4%. 4% multiplied by 200 gives you 8 new base acres. For corn and soybeans, you plant 150 acres per year, both of those commodities. So 600 divided by 1,250 gives you 48%, multiplied by 200 gives you 96 for both those commodities. Since we didn't plant any oat base, we would not end up having any oat base if we chose to reallocate. So what your decision is between this column in red, so the 2013 base acres, or the new base acres. It's an either or decision. And again, a lot of it depends on how you're trying to end up aligning your base. Are you trying to make it so that it's closer to what you're planting, or are you trying to look at, well, what do I think is going to end up getting me higher payments or increase my likelihood of payments? And you want to make your base acreage reallocation decision using one of those two decision making thoughts. Again, the commodity programs that are available, we're going to talk about PLC today. We'll talk about ARC next week. It's a one-time decision. It is for the life of the Farm Bill, so we are looking at this at least a 5-year decision. We do require that sign-up. It's different from crop insurance or some of these area-wide crop insurance products that are new in the Farm Bill. There's no cost or premiums to participate, and you essentially have the choice to pick between that ARC individual program, which covers the entire farm and all the covered commodities on there, or between ARC County and PLC, you can pick on a covered commodity and farm by farm basis to end up deciding which program is going to be the best for you. As I mentioned earlier, the PLC and ARC County decision should be made in conjunction with the base acreage reallocation decision. And the other thing that's important to note is even if the farm does not stay with the producer, the decision does end up staying with the farm for the life of the Farm Bill. One thing that I strongly encourage people not to end up doing is not get defaulted. If you don't come to a decision prior to the March 31st deadline, you'll get defaulted into PLC, and you won't get any benefits if any are triggered for 2014. So you want to try to avoid that set of circumstance if at all possible. So moving into PLC, or price loss coverage, again, it's paid on 85% of base acres for that covered commodity. The payments are made when the effective price is less than the reference price. The effective price is the higher of the market year average price, or the national average loan rate for the commodity. You can see the reference prices and national average loan rates. Soybeans at $8.40, corn at $3.70, wheat at $5.50, and sorghum at $3.95. Again, based on the March WASD report, where we have a midpoint price for soybeans of $10.20. For wheat, we have a midpoint price of $6, and for corn, we're right on $3.70. So for 2014-15 marketing year, it is very, I don't want to say it's 100%, but it's very close to 100% chance that we're not going to get a soybean payment under PLC, and the same for wheat. Corn, we might get a small payment or no payment based on where that final marketing year average price comes in. But if it is right at the midpoint of $3.70, there would be no payment for corn as well. Just again to give you an idea of how this ends up working, it's a reasonably simple calculation. So essentially what you do is you come up with a payment rate. All your payment rate is the difference between the reference price and the marketing year average price. So again, any marketing year average prices that are $3.70 or above for corn, this will be zero, and consequently will make your PLC payment zero, because you're multiplying zero by your payment yield by 85%. But if it is somewhere lower than $3.70, $3.50 is probably not all that likely. But if you look at the $3.50 example, it would give you a 20% payment rate, assuming a CC yield of 135, or if this is your updated, if you were updating your yield, this would be your updated yield. Take 20 cents multiplied by 135 bushels multiplied by 85%, would give you a payment per base acre of $22.95. So again, it's a reasonably simple calculation. One thing that's very important to remember is if your marketing average price is above that reference price, that payment is going to be zero. If it's something below, then again, then that payment yield comes into play. The one thing you have to remember about this payment yield is this is that fixed number. So it's either your existing CC yield or what you've been able to update it to based on what your yields have been over the last 5 years. So again, this number is going to stay the same. It's just a question of if it's your existing yield or your updated payment yield. So it's not going to matter what ends up happening on a year-to-year basis. This payment yield is going to be fixed after that March 31st deadline. Again, we see where these prices are relative to the reference prices. It does not matter what happened in the past for the PLC program. It only matters what's happening in the current marketing year and in future marketing years. So again, if you think we're going to see dramatic price declines below the 840 soybeans reference price or the 550 wheat price or the 370 corn reference price, then PLC will start to trigger. If we think that we've kind of hit the bottom and we're going to start going back up, then it's unlikely that PLC will trigger. But you have to get below these reference prices in order to potentially trigger a PLC payment. Again, where can you end up getting some information? We have our information on the University of Tennessee Farm Bill and Crop Economics webpage. We also have links to FSA and RMA. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you ran some of your estimates through the two FSA decision aids, the one by the University of Illinois, which is this top link, or through the Texas A&M, which is the bottom link, I strongly encourage you to revisit those numbers, because with the updated information from NASS, some of those estimates have changed dramatically, where you could have seen some potential higher ARC County payments in particular that have kind of disappeared due to how high some of those county level yields are. And it's something where it's very county specific, because there are counties that are adjacent or connecting counties where one could potentially still get $50 payments and the other one will get zero. So I strongly encourage people to do that analysis and take a look at what's going on in the counties that they farm. With that, I'm going to stop it there. I strongly encourage people to book an appointment if they have not already done so with their FSA office to make sure they get in there long before the March 31st deadline to make some of these important decisions. And if there's any way I can be of assistance, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me. With that, have a great day.